Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. At a dinner party, my wife threw a glass of wine in my face in front of her friends. "Why do you always act so stupid?" she asked with a smile. I felt the ground sink beneath my feet, but I stayed calm and walked away. When she gets home, her smile quickly fades as she realizes. In a modern-style villa in an upscale Chicago neighborhood, Mark Hamilton stands in front of the bathroom mirror, carefully wiping the traces of red wine that remain on his face. At 36 years old, there was a rare weariness in his chiseled face. As the founder of a well-known architectural design firm, he's used to facing all kinds of challenges. But what happened at his wife's company dinner tonight has the stoic man turning inside out. A few hours ago, Mark hadn't wanted to attend the dinner. He's at a critical stage in the international project at hand, but Allison insisted he attend. It's Jason's first company celebration since he took over as CEO, and with all the executives bringing their partners, "You have to come." She said this, with a certain glint in her eyes that Mark couldn't decipher. The dinner started well, with Allison glamorously holding his arm and introducing her successful architect husband to her colleagues. With the intake of alcohol, however, Allison's behavior began to become erratic. Her laughter grew higher, her eyes drifted, and when Mark suggested she drink less, disaster struck. "Why do you always act so stupid?" Allison suddenly raised her voice, and the glass of red wine in her hand tilted forward, splashing crimson liquid over Mark's white shirt and face. The banquet hall instantly fell silent, and dozens of pairs of eyes looked at them in unison. Mark saw an imperceptible smirk flash across Jason's face as he stood not far away. "Sorry, guys." Mark calmly nodded his head in greeting to those around him, wiped his face briefly with a handkerchief, and then turned to leave the dinner. He didn't look at Allison, didn't even try to understand where her sudden anger was coming from. In 10 years of marriage, he had never seen his wife act this way. Back at home, Mark changes out of his wine-stained shirt and stands in front of the bathroom mirror contemplating the trajectory of the marriage. They met in college 10 years ago. At that time, Allison was a senior majoring in marketing, smart, lively, and passionate about life. Mark, on the other hand, is a brilliant architecture student, calm, focused, and dreaming of designing buildings that will change the face of cities. They admired each other, fell in love quickly, and entered into marriage shortly after graduation. The first few years were beautiful and fulfilling. Mark's career had a rough start, but with talent and hard work, he gradually established himself in the architectural world and started his own design firm. Allison has also steadily risen through the ranks in the marketing department of a multinational corporation. 7 years ago, they welcomed the birth of their daughter Lily, and life seemed perfect. But over the past 2 years, the relationship has been gradually fraying. Mark is focused on expanding the company's international business, often working late into the night. Allison is anxious and dissatisfied with stagnation in the workplace. They communicate less and less with each other, and intimate moments become scarce. Mark has tried to salvage the situation by planning vacations or date nights, but Allison always has a variety of reasons to push back. 3 months ago, things took a subtle turn. Multinational headquarters sends new CEO Jason Foster to take over U.S. operations. The 40-year-old elite executive is poised and is said to be well-connected in the industry. Allison began to bring up Jason's name frequently, talking about how he valued herself and gave new opportunities. She began to work overtime regularly, occasionally had to handle urgent work on weekends, and even had a few short business trips. Mark notices the changes, but chooses to trust his wife and focus on the important project at hand. The silence of the bathroom was interrupted by the sound of a cell phone vibrating. Mark stepped out of the shower to find a text message from Allison. "I'm drunk and not feeling well, staying at Janet's for the night. See you tomorrow." Mark frowned. Janet is a co-worker of Allison's, and the two have a good relationship, but not so much so that she chooses to spend the night at her house after a drunken night out instead of returning to her own home. What's even stranger is that it's only been an hour since the dinner party ended, and Allison has already arrived at the so-called Janet's house. It was at least a 40-minute drive from the venue to Janet's house, which made the timing seem extraordinarily rushed. On a hunch, Mark walked toward Allison's dresser. She used to keep her daily cosmetics, jewelry, and rechargeable batteries in a special handbag. Before leaving the house this evening, Mark distinctly remembers Allison taking the bag with her, but now it lies quietly on the dresser, seemingly never having left. Mark hesitated for a few seconds, then opened the bag. Inside were Allison's usual lipsticks, foundations, a necklace, and her spare cell phone. The phone is primarily used to receive work emails, and Allison rarely uses it to talk or text. Out of some ineffable impulse, Mark pressed the power button. The phone is not password protected and shows the home screen directly. The latest text message came from an unnamed number, labeled only as J. Mark tapped the dialog box, and the latest message was sent half an hour ago. The hotel is set up and waiting for you. Mark's hand trembled slightly. Scroll up and more text messages come to mind. You're so beautiful tonight. Miss your smell. Last night in NYC was unforgettable. Your husband is such a bore. Each message was like a sharp knife stabbing deep into Mark's chest. What took his breath away the most were Allison's replies, full of enthusiasm and anticipation. Can't wait to see you. Mark's got something going on tonight. We've got all night. He's so busy he doesn't even notice us. Mark put down his cell phone and felt a wave of vertigo. He walked to the window and took a deep breath of the cold night air. Outside the window, Chicago was brightly lit with traffic, but at the moment, all color was lost in his eyes. 10 years of marriage, an 8-year-old daughter, and countless shared memories and promises were no match for a betrayal. He forced himself to calm down. His military career had taught him to keep his wits about him in a crisis. The J is obviously Jason, and Allison should be spending the night with him in a hotel somewhere right now. Mark didn't impulsively call and question or drive around looking for a possible hotel. Instead, he sat in an armchair in his study and began to think about his next move. Daughter Lily is spending the weekend at Mark's parents' house, which gives him time to deal with the crisis. Tomorrow, he needed to contact Michael, the comrade in arms from his Special Forces service who was now a private investigator. He needed proof, the full truth of this betrayal. Mark walks over to the liquor cabinet, removes a bottle of whiskey he's had for years, and pours himself a glass. The liquor slid down his throat, bringing a hint of a burning sensation, but nothing compared to the fire in his heart. In this moment, he made a decision. He would not let anyone off the hook so easily. It's not only for his own dignity, but to protect Lily from this ugly betrayal. By the time the clock struck late at night, Mark had a tentative plan. He'll act like he always does and give Allison enough rope to get deeper and deeper into her and Jason. In the meantime, he will gather evidence and prepare fully for his eventual revenge. The game has just begun, Mark whispered, a cold glint in his eyes. And you've already lost. Mark had been awake for a long time as the early morning sunlight poured into the bedroom through the cracks in the curtains. In fact, he'd been up almost all night replaying in his mind the contents of those text messages he'd found last night. The wall clock pointed to 7, and he heard the front door open, followed by the crisp sound of high heels on the marble floor. Allison's back. Mark made a quick decision. He will not show his hand immediately, but needs more evidence and the full truth. He closed his eyes and pretended to be asleep. A few minutes later, the bedroom door opened softly. Allison cautiously walks in, puts her bag down, and walks to the bathroom. Mark watched her through slightly opened eyelids. Her makeup was slightly messy, but her expression held a hint of satisfaction that was hard to hide. Mark continued to feign slumber until he heard the water from the shower. He got up quickly and checked Allison's cell phone that was sitting on the bed. This time it was her primary cell phone, password protected. Instead of trying to unlock it, Mark noticed several unread notification messages. One of them, from Jason F., shows only the first few words. Good morning, beauty. Last night was. That was enough to confirm his suspicions. Mark returned to his spot and pretended to have just woken up when Allison came out of the bathroom. Good morning. Allison flashed a smile, a hint of deliberate relief in her tone. The couch at Janet's was so uncomfortable last night. I regretted not taking a cab back. Mark gazed into his wife's eyes and responded calmly. Yeah? How's Janet doing? Oh, she's fine, just a little cold. Allison made it up as she went along, turning to start changing. By the way, I'm really sorry about last night at the dinner. I was drunk and shouldn't have done that to you. Mark nodded. It's okay, I understand. This calmness seemed to be unexpected by Allison. She paused for a moment and then continued saying, I need to go to the company today to deal with some urgent documents, so I might be back later. Okay, I have work to take care of too. Mark replied, knowing in his heart that it was another lie. When Allison left the house, Mark immediately dialed Michael's number. Michael was his comrade in arms while serving in the Special Forces and retired as a private investigator and security specialist. Years of friendship allowed Mark to confide in last night's discovery without reservation. Look, I need hard evidence, Mark told Michael on the other end of the line. Not only for myself, but for a possible future custody battle. Understood. Michael's voice was calm and professional. I'll start following up today. Are you sure you want to go this way? Once you start, it's hard to go back. I'm sure, Mark said firmly. They chose to betray and they should face the consequences. For the next 2 weeks, Mark ostensibly maintains the normal pace of life and work, but in reality is working closely with Michael to gather evidence on Allison and Jason. He noticed that Allison was working more and more overtime and traveling, sometimes staying out all night. To add to his heartache, Allison also pays significantly less attention to her daughter Lily and often misses bonding time with her. Michael's preliminary findings reveal more disturbing facts. Jason Foster was not only Allison's lover, but also had a history of multiple extramarital affairs. To make matters worse, 2 years ago during his tenure as an executive of another company, he had an affair with a female subordinate and managed to move her away from the core team after the relationship ended, causing the woman to eventually commit suicide due to depression. The incident was covered up by company executives, but was a less publicized secret in the industry. The man's a complete asshole, Michael said as he debriefed Mark in the cafeteria. He's treating his office romance like a game, and Allison's just the latest prey. Give me more details, Mark demanded. I need to know when they started and how often and where they meet now. A week later, Michael provided a more detailed report. According to his surveillance, Allison's relationship with Jason began with a separate meeting 3 months ago when Jason first took office. After that, they began frequent contact under the pretext of work, which developed into a substantial physical relationship about a month ago. They usually meet in fancy downtown hotels and sometimes take advantage of business trips to date in other cities. Mark decided to confirm this with his own eyes. With Michael's assistance, he learns that Allison and Jason plan to spend the night together at the Four Seasons downtown on Friday night. On Friday evening, Mark told Allison that he needed to go to the studio for an urgent project and might not be home all night. Allison could barely hide her expression of relief and quickly concocted an excuse that she needed to work late as well. At 8 p.m., Mark was in Michael's car, parked in the lot across the street from the Four Seasons. Through the binoculars, he could clearly see Allison walking into the hotel lobby on Jason's arm, wearing a red dress he'd never seen before. The intimate gesture and the look of happiness that filled her face contrasted with her aloofness at home. Seen enough? Michael asked, concern in his voice. Mark lowered the binoculars, no anger or sadness on his face, just a strange calm. Enough. I know what to do now. The next day, Mark makes an appointment to see his sister Rachel. As a successful attorney, Rachel has extensive experience in the area of family law. Rachel's expression turned serious after Mark gave a full account of the situation. From a legal standpoint, you need to gather evidence more systematically, Rachel said as she thought. Not only about the affair, but also proof of Allison's recent decrease in attention to Lily. This is critical to fighting for custody in the future. I understand, Mark nodded. Michael's already helping me build a full chain of evidence. But I also want to know if I want to take a more. What are the proactive measures to look out for? Rachel looked at her brother keenly. What are you planning? A way to make them pay, Mark said calmly. Not just as simple as a divorce. Rachel pondered for a moment, then replied cautiously. As long as you don't break the law or cause physical harm to anyone, I won't stop you. But remember, protecting Lily and your own future is what's important. Over the next few weeks, Mark continued to gather evidence while beginning a more in-depth investigation into Jason's background and company. Through the help of a friend in the industry, he obtained some non-public information about the company's finances under Jason's management, which contained some questionable bookkeeping practices. During this time, Mark acted as calm and considerate as ever, even offering to drive Allison to the airport when she made up excuses for a business trip. This apparent normalcy allows Allison to let her guard down, and her behavior with Jason becomes bolder and bolder, almost to the point of being unapologetic. One night, when Allison once again lies about working late, Mark decides to run a test. He sent Allison a text message. "I have an impromptu emergency meeting with a client and need your help with Lily. Is that okay?" Allison's reply came quickly. "I'm sorry, I really can't get away. Can I ask your mom to help?" Mark looked at the screen of his cell phone with a sneer at the corner of his mouth. At this very moment, Lily is enjoying a weekend at his parents' house, and Allison doesn't even realize it. She is so engrossed in her relationship with Jason that she no longer even cares about her own daughter's whereabouts. At this moment, the last trace of hesitation in Mark's heart disappeared. He picked up the phone and dialed Michael's number. "I need more detailed information about Jason's company finances. Find someone you know, no matter how much it costs." At the same time, Mark begins secretly transferring some of the joint assets to ensure that no matter what happens, Lily's future education fund and livelihood security will not be jeopardized. He also contacted several trusted friends to prepare for the coming storm. Mark was well aware that he needed to remain patient and calm until the truth was fully revealed. He created a detailed schedule, each step carefully considered, with the goal of not only ending the betrayed marriage, but making the betrayer pay the price. One day, while Mark was organizing the evidence he had collected, the phone suddenly rang. It was Allison, with obvious panic in her voice. "Mark, my dad just had a heart attack and was taken to the hospital. The doctor said the situation was dangerous. I need to go to the hospital now. Can you come?" Mark immediately agreed and quickly gathered his thoughts after hanging up. Allison's father, William, is a kindly old man who has been very supportive of Mark's career. Despite dealing with his wife's betrayal, Mark's respect and concern for the elderly has not changed. When he arrived at the hospital, he saw Allison whimpering in the hallway. Seeing Mark, she immediately jumped into his arms. The doctor said surgery might be needed, but it's risky. Mark patted her back gently and soothingly said, "It's going to be okay. William is a strong man." Just then, Mark's gaze crossed over Allison's shoulder to see Jason coming down the hallway at the other end. Their eyes met in the air, and Jason visibly froze for a moment before quickly turning away. Allison hadn't noticed the scene, but a new realization had crossed Mark's mind. Even when his father-in-law's life and death were at stake, Jason and Allison stayed in touch. This behavior goes beyond a simple extramarital affair and displays a chilling indifference. As William is wheeled into surgery, Mark holds Allison's hand, showing the support that a concerned husband should have for his wife. But his heart has made up its mind. The plan for revenge will be accelerated, and this crisis will be the perfect opportunity to do so. "Everything's going to be okay," Mark told Allison, inwardly contemplating a very different ending. "We'll get through this." The lights were on in the operating room, and Mark's eyes were firm and calm. The chessboard has been laid out, and the next step is to wait for the perfect moment to make the fatal move. William's surgery lasted 4 hours, and eventually the surgeon walked out of the operating room with cautious optimism. The surgery was successful, but the next 48 hours are critical. Allison clutched Mark's hand, tears blurring her makeup. The moment of vulnerability and dependence struck Mark with a twinge of irony. This woman who had betrayed him and still considered him her most solid support in a moment of crisis. "I'll stay with you," Mark said softly, while noticing Allison's cell phone screen light up to show a message from Jason. She quickly snapped her cell phone to her lap and pretended not to see it. Late at night, while Allison sleeps briefly on a bench outside her hospital room, Mark quietly leaves the hospital and drives to the appointed place to meet Michael. The cafe was nearly empty at midnight, and Michael was already waiting in a corner seat. "How's William?" Michael began by asking with concern. "Stable, but still under observation," Mark responded briefly before getting straight to the point. "I need to get up to speed." "What's new on your end?" Michael took a folder out of his briefcase. "I contacted a couple of professionals to help, and here's the information we have so far on Jason's company." Mark flipped through the file, his brow furrowing the more he frowned. Based on these preliminary investigations, Jason took over the U.S. operations and engaged in a series of aggressive financial maneuvers, including certain questionable fund transfers and bookkeeping. These practices may not technically be explicitly illegal yet, but they are definitely in a gray area. I need more conclusive evidence, Mark said after a moment of contemplation. Access to someone inside the company? Michael nodded. A professional financial investigator can be contacted who has access to more in-depth information, but it will cost a fee. Money isn't an issue, Mark replied decisively. Plus, I need to install some recording equipment at the places where Allison and Jason meet regularly. The hotel may not be easy, but have they met elsewhere? According to my tracking, they sometimes dated at Jason's private apartment in that new luxury condo in the North End. Mark considered, there's a strict security system in place, and it's too risky to install equipment directly. Is there any other way? Michael gave a professional smile. There is a new type of directional recording device that can capture sound from a specific area from a longer distance. I can use it near a restaurant or cafe they frequent. Also, Allison's car could be fitted with a small recording device, very discreetly. The two discussed the next plan of action in detail and didn't end their meeting until 3 a.m. Back at the hospital, Allison was still in a light sleep, her cell phone sitting on the small table next to her. Mark took the opportunity to glance at the notification bar and saw multiple unread messages from Jason. The next day, William was doing better and was able to talk briefly. Allison was visibly relieved and suggested that she needed to go home to shower and change. You go. I'll stay and take care of Dad, Mark said thoughtfully. And bring my laptop, by the way, so I can take care of some work here. Allison kissed his cheek gratefully. That's very kind of you. I'll be back soon. Mark watched her departing back, knowing that she would likely meet with Jason first. This was just what he wanted, as Michael was waiting at home to install those special recording devices. For the next 2 weeks, Mark was fully engaged in the preparation of his revenge plan. By day, he is an exemplary husband who cares about his father-in-law's health and supports his wife. By night, he weaves an invisible web with Michael and other facilitators. By digging deeper with a professional financial investigator, Mark gets more inside information about Jason's company. As it turns out, Jason not only took an aggressive approach to his accounts in order to boost his performance in the short term, but also allegedly engaged in some insider trading. In particular, stock trading by related persons prior to the signing of several major contracts showed an unusual pattern. Meanwhile, the recording equipment Michael had installed came into play. In a private booth at a fancy restaurant, they captured Jason's conversation with Allison. Relax, honey, Jason said with a hint of arrogance in his voice. Your husband doesn't know anything. He's too focused on his career. I know, but my father's illness is making me a little nervous, Allison responded. And Mark's been acting extra thoughtful lately, which makes me a little uneasy. Jason chuckled softly. That just means he's oblivious. Seriously, if he really had any doubts, with a man's nature, he would have exploded long ago. Maybe, Allison's voice was a little hesitant, but we'd better be careful. When my father is fully recovered, I will find a suitable time to file for separation. And then we can be together openly. Jason's tone was full of promise. And then I'll promote you to vice president of marketing, the position you've always wanted. The conversation left Mark's heart completely cold. It's not just that the betrayal is reconfirmed, it's that Allison is already planning to separate from him. And Jason goes so far as to use his position as bait. Everything is so naked. Mark begins to organize the collected evidence more systematically while developing a more specific plan for revenge. He filed everything in categories: evidence of Allison's affair, records of Jason's misconduct, proof of the company's financial problems. Each item is double-checked to ensure impeccability. Revenge is all about timing, Mark told Rachel when they were discussing legal strategy in her office. And I want to reveal everything on a special occasion after William has fully recovered. Rachel scrutinized her brother's determined expression. You've thought this through, haven't you? Mark nodded. Allison's father has always valued family honor, and he would be very hurt if he knew what his daughter had done. I don't want to add to the pain while he's critically ill, but once he recovers, I'll reveal the truth on an inescapable occasion. What are you going to do about Lily? Rachel asks the most critical question. She's 8 years old. This is all too harsh for her. Mark's expression softened. I've made arrangements. The day of the revelation, Lily would spend the weekend with my parents at their cottage on Lake Michigan. She will not face the initial storm directly. As for the long term, I would hire a child psychologist to help her through this period. Rachel sighed. You know, even with all this evidence, the court will probably award joint custody. I know, Mark replied calmly, but I have enough evidence that Allison's attention to Lily has decreased dramatically lately, coupled with her inappropriate relationship with Jason and their public indiscretions, that the judge would be more inclined to give me primary custody. As William's health gradually improves, Mark realizes that the time for revenge is near. He chose the timing carefully. A family reunion after William's discharge from the hospital, where all family and friends would be present to celebrate the old man's recovery. Meanwhile, Mark notices that Allison and Jason are getting bolder. One night, when Mark expressed the need to go to the studio and stay up late to finish the project, Allison was almost too eager to show her understanding and support. Through the device Michael installed in Allison's car, Mark hears her talking to Jason. He's not coming home all night, Allison said excitedly. So we can celebrate at your apartment. Fantastic, Jason responded. I've ordered champagne. By the way, have you made arrangements for your business trip to New York next week? Of course, I told Mark it was company-mandated quarterly training for 3 days. Perfect, we can have a little vacation there. Mark calmly listened to the entire conversation and then contacted Michael. The arrangement over in New York is finalized. I need you to follow them and record all activity. In particular, I want to know about all the business partners Jason met with there. The final piece of the revenge program's puzzle is about to fall into place. After further digging by financial investigators, Mark discovers that Jason is planning a secret meeting in New York with a potential partner, a meeting that may involve the exchange of insider information. Obtaining evidence of this meeting, coupled with the financial anomalies previously collected, would be enough to deal a fatal blow to Jason. Everything was going according to plan until an accident happened. One day before William was to be discharged from the hospital, Lily suddenly developed a high fever and was admitted to the same hospital. The doctor's initial diagnosis was severe tonsillitis, requiring hospitalization for a few days. This unexpected situation disrupted part of Mark's plan, but also provided an unexpected opportunity. When Allison learns that her daughter is hospitalized, her first reaction is surprisingly hesitant to cancel her trip to New York with Jason. I have to go to New York. It's my promotion at stake, Allison whispered to Jason over the phone, unaware that her words were clearly captured by the recording device. Mark can take care of Lily. It's just tonsillitis. Upon hearing this conversation, the last vestiges of Mark's hesitation disappeared. He decides to adjust his plans and use this new situation as a catalyst for revenge. Change the strategy a bit, Mark told Michael. Have the team in New York continue to monitor them, but our main operation will be ahead of schedule. The day William was released from the hospital, his family held a small celebration in his honor at the hospital. Since Lily was still hospitalized, the celebration venue was chosen to be the hospital's multipurpose room. Allison's mother, siblings, and several close friends came. Allison acted like a good daughter and mother who cared about her father and daughter the entire time, and no one knew that she had already put her bags in her car and was ready to head straight to the airport after the celebration. Just as everyone was getting ready to cut the cake, Mark got a call from Michael. After a short conversation, his expression became unusually serious. What happened? Allison asked, noticing the change in her husband's expression. Mark took a deep breath and looked around at his friends and family before speaking slowly. I just got word that Jason Foster has been taken in for questioning by Securities and Exchange Commission investigators. The room was silent as everyone turned to Allison, waiting for her reaction. Her face instantly lost its blood color. What? Why? It's impossible. Supposedly, it's about an insider trading investigation, Mark added calmly, his eyes looking directly at his wife. Do you know anything about that, Allison? After all, your working relationship is very close. Allison's eyes flickered. I don't know anything about it. This must be a misunderstanding. It was during this awkward silence that Allison's cell phone suddenly rang. The screen showed the caller as Jason F. The atmosphere of the entire room instantly froze. William frowned and looked at his daughter. Allison, what happened? Do you and your CEO have something we should know about? Mark knew that the perfect time had come. Revenge is about to kick in. William's eyes moved back and forth between Allison and Mark, and the air in the room seemed to freeze. Allison fumbled with her hands and stuffed the ringing cell phone back into her bag, her face pale. It's just a work thing, Dad. She forced a smile. Nothing to worry about. Mark stood in the corner of the room, his eyes calmly watching it all. He knew that the first stage of revenge had begun, and this was only the beginning. Allison, William's voice was weak from illness, but his tone was firm. As someone who has been through most of my life, I can tell when someone is hiding the truth. If there are any questions, now is the time to speak up. Other family and friends in the room cast inquiring glances. Allison's mother, Catherine, frowned, obviously sensing something was wrong as well. It was during this tense moment that the nurse pushed her way in. "Mr. Hamilton, Lily's awake, and she's looking for you and her mother." Mark nodded to the crowd. "Let's go check on Lily first. We can talk about everything else later." As they walked out of the multipurpose room, Allison whispered to Mark, "I need to return a few work emails, so why don't you go ahead and check on Lily?" Mark looked at her flustered and nodded gently. "Sure, but before you contact Jason, maybe you should know that the SEC investigation is not an empty one." Allison's head snapped up, a flash of panic in her eyes. "What do you mean?" "Go see Lily," Mark said calmly, "and then we'll talk." Half an hour later, when Mark made sure Lily was comfortably asleep, he stepped out of the hospital room to find Allison anxiously talking on the phone at the end of the hallway. Seeing Mark approaching, she quickly hung up. "What did Jason say?" Mark asked bluntly. Allison's defenses instantly crumbled. You know, about you and Jason?" "Yes, I know everything." Mark's voice was surprisingly calm. "I've been investigating since that night you threw a drink in my face." Allison's expression goes from shock to panic to a strange sort of relief. "That? Then why didn't you say so? Why are you still acting like everything is normal?" "Because I need to know the whole truth," Mark said calmly. "Not just about your betrayal, but about what Jason did. In fact, I happen to have some evidence of insider trading in his company." Allison's face turned even paler. "How did you?" "It doesn't matter," Mark interrupted her. "What does matter is that I've given this evidence to the proper authorities. Jason now faces not just an investigation, but substantive charges." Allison stumbled back a few steps and leaned against the wall so she didn't fall. "Why? Mark, why are you doing this? Why?" Mark's voice took on emotion for the first time, but quickly regained its composure. "Go back to the ward and check on Lily. Then you'll probably know the answer. But right now, you have more pressing things to worry about." William is waiting for an explanation. When the two returned to the multipurpose room, William and Catherine were sitting there with worried faces. Other family and friends have politely left to give the family privacy. "Dad, Mom," Mark spoke, his voice gentle but firm. "There are things you need to know, and I think Allison would be the right person to tell you." All eyes turn to Allison as she stands there like a criminal under a spotlight. She opened her mouth shakily, but only a weak sob escaped. "If you can't speak, then I will." Mark took a small projector out of his pocket and attached it to his cell phone. Sometimes images are more powerful than words. For the next 20 minutes, the projection played a carefully edited video on the wall. It includes intimate footage of Allison and Jason on different occasions, recordings of their conversations. And the most shocking part of all, Allison's dates with Jason during William's hospitalization, and even warm scenes with Jason before and after visiting his father. Tears fell down Catherine's face, while William's expression gradually changed from shock to deep disappointment. "During your illness, while you were lying in the ICU, Allison was not only continuing her affair, she was also planning how to use your recovery celebration as a stepping stone for her departure from me," Mark said calmly. "And today, despite Lily's illness and hospitalization, she's planning on rushing to the airport at the end of the celebration to spend 3 days with Jason in New York. Her luggage is already in the car." Allison crumbled to her knees. "Dad, Mom, I can explain." William shook his head slowly, his voice shaking with emotion. "There's nothing to explain, Allison. I see it clearly. I don't know if I can ever forgive you for your betrayal of Mark and Lily. But what breaks my heart even more is that when my life was on the line, you—" His voice choked, unable to continue. Catherine walked over to her daughter, her face filled with tears and disappointment. "We didn't raise you that way, Allison. Whatever the problem, betrayal is never the answer." Mark turned off the projector and looked around the room. "I apologize for revealing the truth in this way, but I think you have a right to know. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to get back to Lily. As Mark turned to leave, Allison rushed forward and grabbed his arm. Wait, Mark. You can't just leave. We need to talk. Mark looked at her calmly. Talk about what? Your plans with Jason? Or how are you going to explain your departure to Lily? Maybe we should talk about what you told Jason last week. Mark doesn't know anything. He's too focused on his career. Or how you all laughed at my reaction after you humiliated me at that dinner party. Allison's face contorted with shock. You know all about it. I know a lot more than you think, Mark said softly, his eyes icy. Right now, I need to get back to my daughter. She needs a parent who really cares about her today. Mark calmly walks out of the room, leaving Allison to crumble under the disappointed gaze of her parents. He knew that this was only the first stage of revenge. When Allison finally returns home the next morning, she finds that the lock on the front door has been changed. Her key wouldn't open it, and the doorbell went unanswered. She called Mark's number, and it went straight to voicemail. In desperation, she dialed Jason's number, but again the call went unanswered. Just as she was standing in the doorway, not knowing what to do, a delivery truck pulled up in front of the door. The delivery man pulled out a thick envelope. Special delivery for Ms. Allison Hamilton. Please sign for it. Allison opens the envelope to find legal papers from Rachel's law firm regarding Mark's filing of a divorce suit and a temporary restraining order requiring her to stay out of the home for the time being, as well as filing for full custody of Lily. The document clearly lays out the evidence of betrayal, as well as Allison's recent track record of paying significantly less attention to Lily. There's also a notice of a court hearing scheduled for just 3 days from now. Allison leaned against the car door and felt a wave of vertigo. It all happened so fast that her world seemed to fall apart overnight. She tried to contact Jason again, but the phone remained unanswered. In her hotel room, Allison turns on the TV, hoping for a distraction, but is shocked by the day's financial news. Shares of Jason's company plummeted 30% on reports that CEO Jason Foster is being investigated for alleged insider trading and that several charges are pending. The company's board of directors has met urgently to discuss crisis response measures. Just then, Allison's cell phone rings and the screen displays the name of the company's human resources director. The call was short and to the point. In view of the current situation, the company had decided to suspend her job functions with immediate effect and conduct an internal investigation. She was required to take an indefinite leave of absence during the investigation. Over the next few days, Allison's world completely falls apart. She can't reach Jason, and her coworkers at work have shunned her. To make matters worse, when she attempted to visit Lily in the hospital, she was told that, by court order, she would only be allowed to visit for a limited period of time under the supervision of a hospital social worker prior to the hearing. Meanwhile, an anonymous social media account began a series of posts about Allison's inappropriate relationship with Jason. The posts, which contained selectively edited conversations and photos, quickly went viral within her social circles. Almost overnight, Allison finds herself a target, as everyone from coworkers to friends and even distant relatives begin to alienate her. On the day of the hearing, Allison faced the courtroom alone. Jason remains unreachable, and her parents, while present, choose to sit away from her. Mark, on the other hand, shows up with his lawyer sister Rachel, calm and confident. After reviewing all the evidence, the judge ruled extremely unfavorably for Allison. Pending final judgment, primary custody of Lily was temporarily awarded to Mark, and Allison was granted only limited visitation rights, which had to be supervised. Walking out of the courtroom, Allison finally breaks down. She rushed to Mark. Why did you do that? Why ruin everything for me when you could just ask for a divorce? Mark looked at her calmly. I didn't destroy anything, Allison. Every consequence is the result of your own choices. I'm just making sure you have to face those choices. Those social media posts. That's what you did, right? Allison's voice trembled with anger. Mark nodded slightly, just sharing the truth. People have a right to know the truth, just as I have a right to know. Just then, Allison's cell phone rang. It was Jason, finally calling. She rushed to answer, only to hear Jason's icy voice. Don't contact me again, Allison. My attorney advised me to cut off all contact with you. Your husband obviously has all the evidence on us, and now I need to focus on my own legal problems. Before the phone hung up, Jason added something that made Allison completely despair. By the way, the board has decided to relieve you of your duties. The company doesn't need that negative impact. Allison looked at her cell phone, then looked up at Mark with disbelief in her eyes. You? How did you do all this? Focus, determination, and a quest for the truth, Mark replied calmly, were once the foundation of our marriage, but you chose to betray it. Now, if you'll excuse me, Lily is waiting for me. Mark turned away, leaving Allison standing alone on the courthouse steps as the crowd around her seemed to cast condemning glances. For the next few days, Mark focused on caring for Lily and rebuilding his life. The hospital's child psychiatrist helped Lily make sense of her parents' separation, and although the girl went through a difficult time, she adapted surprisingly well. Meanwhile, Jason's legal troubles continued to deepen. The Securities and Exchange Commission's investigation expanded and more evidence of insider trading came to light. Documents provided anonymously by Mark to regulators played a key role, with multiple industry insiders confirming Jason's wrongdoing. The company's shareholders angrily demanded a thorough investigation, and the board of directors urgently removed Jason from his position. The media covered the corporate scandal, and Jason's career was completely destroyed. A month later, prosecutors formally filed criminal charges against him, with insider trading and financial fraud charges potentially exposing him to a lengthy prison sentence. Allison is in an equally difficult position. After losing her job, her reputation, and most of her friends, she is forced to move into a small apartment. The limited weekly visits with Lily become her only solace, but Allison is pained by her daughter's apparent indifference to her. One day, 3 months later, Mark picked Lily up after her dance class. As they walked out of the dance studio, they found Allison standing in the parking lot like she had been waiting for a long time. "Mark, can we talk?" Allison asked, the usual confidence gone from her voice. Mark looked at Lily and then said to his daughter, "Honey, can you go wait in the car for Daddy for a minute? I'll be there soon." When Lily walked away, Mark turned to Allison. "What's up?" "I know I've made an unforgivable mistake," Allison's voice choked, "but I'd like to ask for a chance not to salvage our marriage, which is no longer possible, but to regain Lily's trust as a mother. I've been to counseling and want to change." Mark gazed at the woman who had been his wife before him and saw a thoroughly defeated soul, but his heart had run out of pity. "The court has made its arrangements, Allison. If you want to increase your visitation time, you need to go through due process of law." "It's not just visiting hours, Mark," Allison pleaded. "I want to know if you're willing to no longer actively obstructing our relationship. I know you have the power to make everything more difficult for me." Mark was silent for a moment, then said calmly, "Everything I do is based on truth and facts. If you can show that you have changed, the judge will consider adjusting the arrangement. But remember, I won't let Lily get hurt again." He turned to leave, but stopped abruptly. "There's something you should know." Jason's attorney offered a plea deal in which he agreed to testify to expose others involved in insider trading in exchange for a reduced sentence. "Your name is on the list as an informed facilitator." Allison's face instantly turned pale. "This can't be. I don't know any company insiders." "Maybe," Mark said calmly, "but Jason seems to have a different opinion. I suggest you consult an attorney as soon as possible." Leaving those words behind, Mark walked toward Lily waiting in the car without a second glance back. He knew that revenge was complete, not through violence or direct retaliation, but by making the betrayer face the truth and the full consequences of his or her actions. As they drove away, Lily asked, "Daddy, Mommy looks sad. Did she do something wrong?" Mark looked at Allison's lonely figure in the rearview mirror and replied softly, "Everyone makes choices, honey. It is important that we take responsibility for our choices." Under the star-dotted night sky, Mark drove toward their home. It's not the life he once fantasized about, but after weathering the storm of betrayal and revenge, he finally feels a sense of peace. Whatever the future holds, he has ensured one thing: betrayal will always have its price, and the truth, in the end, will come out. 6 months later, spring arrived late in Boston. Mark stood on the balcony of his new home and looked across the street at the children playing in the park, including his daughter Lily. Since moving to the city 3 months ago, everything seems to be going in a good direction. Moving is a tough decision, but a necessary one. Chicago has too many painful memories, and Boston offers a fresh start. Mark's design firm has opened a branch here and Lily is settling in well at her new school. This city, not far from the Atlantic Ocean, became the ideal place for them to rebuild their lives. Dad, look at me. Lily swings high on the swing and waves to him. Mark smiled in response, a warmth welling up in his heart. Despite the trauma of her parents' divorce, Lily has shown amazing resilience. The child psychiatrist said regular counseling and Mark's steady support were key to helping her get through it. A cell phone vibration interrupted Mark's thoughts. It was a message from Rachel. The verdict is in. Full custody is awarded to you and Allison gets conditional visitation. Congratulations. Mark took a long breath. The long custody battle has finally come to a head. Although he never doubted the outcome, the evidence was simply too overwhelming. The end of the legal process still brought a sense of relief. Looking back on the changes of the past 6 months, it seems like I've been through a long nightmare. Before leaving Chicago, he had stumbled across a newspaper article about Jason. That once prominent CEO eventually pleaded guilty and accepted a sentence of 5 years in prison. The plea deal with the prosecution did implicate several executives with knowledge of the situation, but to Mark's surprise, Allison was not ultimately indicted. The investigation revealed that while she was aware of some of the insider information, she was not directly involved in the trading activities. However, that doesn't mean Allison got away with it. She lost her job, her reputation, most of her possessions, and primary custody of her daughter. The last time they met, the once radiant woman had become haggard, the confidence in her eyes gone. Mark retrieved his thoughts and put his cell phone back in his pocket. The past is behind us, and it's time to focus on the future. Mr. Hamilton? A voice came from behind. Mark turned to see Elizabeth, the landlady, standing in the doorway. There is a special delivery for you that needs to be signed for. Mark took the package and recognized the postmark from Chicago. Upon unwrapping it, he found a thick legal document inside, along with a handwritten letter from Allison. After a moment's hesitation, he decided to read the letter first. Mark, the letter reads, I don't know how to begin this letter. Maybe the first thing to say is that I'm sorry. That word is far from adequate to express my remorse, but it is what I can give. The past 6 months have given me time to reflect on my behavior and choices. I won't defend myself, and I know that our marriage can't be saved. I'm just writing to let you know that I've been in therapy and trying to be a better person and hopefully a better mom. Enclosed is a legal document in which I agree to waive all rights to our property in Chicago. It's a little bit of what I can do to make up for it. I know it's nowhere near enough to offset what I've done, but hopefully it will provide a little more security for Lily's future. Finally, I want to thank you for not instilling hatred for me and Lily. The social worker told me that during visitation, she mentioned that you never said anything bad about me in front of her. This forgiveness I don't deserve, but am deeply grateful for. I will continue to try to change, and hopefully one day I can earn my daughter's trust back, even if it takes a long time. Allison. Mark put the letter down, feeling a mixture of emotions. He felt neither the joy of victory nor the urge to forgive, only a strange calmness. Revenge has been accomplished, the damage has been done, and now everyone is suffering the consequences of their respective actions. He picked up the legal document and flipped through it, confirming that the contents matched what Allison had stated in her letter. This means he can sell the Chicago property and add a sizable amount to Lily's college fund. Just as Mark was contemplating, Lily came running back from the park with a happy smile on her face. Daddy, I made a new friend. Her name is Emma, and she lives across the street from us. She invited me to her house for the weekend. Mark smiled and hugged his daughter. That's great, honey. Later in the evening, when Lily has gone to bed, Mark sits on the balcony and looks out over Boston at night, reflecting on his journey over the past year or so. From the night she found out about the betrayal, to the carefully planned revenge, to her new life today, it all seems like a dream. His cell phone lit up again, this time with a message from Sarah. Sarah is an interior designer he met in Boston, and the two have worked together on several projects and have recently begun having occasional dinners together. Does tomorrow's exhibition still count? The message reads. Mark replied with a confirmation and then paused. He's not ready to commit to a new relationship, but Sarah's company makes him feel relaxed and at ease. Maybe one day he will open up again, but it will be on the basis of getting to know each other well enough to build real trust. The experience taught him a lot. About betrayal, about revenge, about rebuilding. Most of all, it taught him to value the truth, no matter how brutal. How those secrets hidden beneath the shiny surface will ultimately affect a family, a relationship. At that moment, Mark's eyes inadvertently fell on the picture frame on the desk. That's Lily's latest photo, taken at her ballet performance last month. The girl's smile was bright and real, very different from the calculated smiles Mark remembered from Allison. He hoped Lily would learn something from the fiasco, though he would never explain to her in detail the full truth of the betrayal. When she grows up, there may come a day when he will tell her about the importance of honesty and choice and how each decision shapes our lives. The phone suddenly rang with an unfamiliar Chicago number. Mark hesitated for a moment before picking up. "Hello. Mark, it's William." Allison's father's hoarse voice came from the other end of the line. "William." Mark was a little surprised. "Are you okay?" "Still alive," the old man replied briefly, then paused. "I saw the papers for the transfer of the property. Allison told me she gave up all her rights." "Yes, I received the papers today." There was another moment of silence. Then William spoke slowly. "I won't excuse Allison's behavior. She made an unforgivable mistake and is suffering the consequences that she deserves. But as a father, it's tough to watch your child suffer, no matter the reason." Mark nodded understandingly, even though William couldn't see it. "I understand. She's changing, Mark. Slowly but surely it is changing. Maybe someday she can be the kind of mom Lily needs." William's voice held a hint of hope. "Maybe," Mark responded calmly. "The judge has ruled on conditional visitation rights. If she continues to improve, I won't stand in the way of her relationship with Lily." After the call ended, Mark stared longingly at the night sky. A year ago today, he was living in a marriage he thought was perfect, oblivious to his wife's betrayal. Today, everything has changed, but not all for the worse. He recalled the words of an officer from his military days who used to say, "Sometimes the greatest injuries bring the most important lessons." This storm of betrayal and revenge ultimately prompts him to re-examine his life, relationships, and values. Early the next morning, Mark woke up early to prepare breakfast. When Lily sleepily walked into the kitchen, he had already made her favorite pancakes. "Daddy," Lily asked suddenly, "when is Mommy coming to see me?" Mark put down the skillet in his hand and looked at his daughter seriously. "Next weekend, if you want to see her." Lily nodded. "I want to see her. I have some more questions for her." Mark stroked his daughter's hair. "You can ask her anything, honey. But remember, sometimes adults make mistakes and are learning how to do better." Lily seemed to ponder this statement before looking up at her father. "Like when I fall in ballet class, but do better next time?" Mark smiled and nodded. "Yeah, kind of like that. It's important that we learn from our mistakes and then try not to repeat them again." Outside the window, the Boston sunlight poured over the new green leaves, mapping out the glow of hope. Mark knew that there was still a long road ahead, but at least now, they stood for truth and honesty. No matter how the future changes, this clarity will guide them to a better tomorrow. Behind the broken mask, the true face was finally revealed. It's scarred, but at least it's no longer shadowed by lies and betrayal. This is perhaps the most cherished new life of all. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.